Good morning, folks. Thank you as ever for tuning in to the news event. Now, as you can see, I'm not in my usual environment, and the reason for that is that I'm off to my first event as leader of Advance UK. I think there are a couple of hundred people coming, and I'm really looking forward to addressing them. But I'm not therefore able to film my usual news at Ben for 10 a.m. on Sunday morning. Instead, what we're going to do is put together a compressed version of a podcast I did with Andy the Cabby earlier last week, which, if I may say so, I think was a rather good conversation. So that will be going out tomorrow as the news at Ben at 10 o'clock. And the event I'm going to now in Billericay will also be filmed and put out in due course. So you'll be able to see what it was like at the first Advanced UK event of its kind. Thank you very much for tuning in, folks.
I'd known for a long time a new political force was needed, and then I saw an opportunity for a new political force when they threw Rupert Lowe out of the party in the way that they did, because that revealed, I think, to those who are engaged in politics, that Farage is not, they'll use lawfare, they'll treat senior members of the party appallingly. This is not the force for good and change that we had hoped for in the United Kingdom. So I had known there was a need for a political force, and then I saw the opportunity for a political force. And then, of course, they threw Suella Braverman and Robert Jenrick and everyone else under a bus. And whatever your views of Suella Braverman as a Home Secretary, one has to recognize that she has said things that vast majority of Home Secretaries are simply not prepared to even go near. She'd made a fantastic speech in late 2023 in Washington, in which she called out the impending end of Western civilization if we didn't get a grip of the way that we're being governed. And that was that I think we can see that as a kind of political watershed moment where you've got the Home Secretary of the United Kingdom saying, we're governing ourselves into oblivion. We've got to stop. And so I think reform calling her out also, I think, has revealed reform for what it is. What Suella Braverman's time in office was not good as Home Secretary. We had the Boris wave of immigration. No, sorry, so she was under Sunak, but we had all that continuing. The Boris wave of immigration continued, but she wasn't of that cloth. She was actually trying to stop it. And anyway, so I saw the need and the opportunity. And so eventually push came to shove. And I didn't want to do this, Andy. I didn't want to set up a political party. I know how difficult it is to set up a party. I know how difficult it is to get into the British electorate psyche. I know that firsthand because I helped Richard Tice get reform on the map. But I think it's absolutely necessary that we have a new party in this country. And I think that it is absolutely possible for that new party to establish itself. We tend to think of the political landscape as being quite settled, as it has been. People culturally vote either Labour or Conservative. And it's been very difficult to break that cultural disposition. But reform has broken it. And the British people now are crying out for change. And they're not crying out for the kind of politics that reform is offering up. They're crying out for a form of politics which puts the United Kingdom, its interests and its people's interests firmly at the front and center of every policy and its political philosophy. And reform isn't doing that. And I can give you lots of examples of why it's not doing it. So anyway, Advance UK was launched. I set a hurdle just to test that my own understanding of where where people's minds was. I just to test that I wasn't getting it wrong. I set a hurdle of 30,000 members for Advance UK in order for us to then take the step for Electoral Commission registration, become a full political party, start fighting elections and so on. And I've been bowled over by the response. And we've just to put this in context, I think UKIP, I'm not having a go at UKIP, but UKIP has 3,000 members. And within 7 or 8 weeks of our launch, we're now well over 20,000. We've got well over 22,000 donors and members. And we've got over 30,000 people signed up, some of whom, you know, weren't able to afford the £10 fee. So we're moving very, very quickly to 30,000 members. I'm absolutely certain we'll be at 30,000 members in a matter of weeks. we won't have to wait months. I had actually thought it'll be 6 months
Right.
minimum before we get to 30,000. We're going to get there, I think, by September, middle of September. And so we are then going to be applying for registration with the Electoral Commission, and we will become a fully fledged political party.
And you'll be £100,000 out of pocket.
And I will be £100,000 out of pocket because I have said that I will donate £100,000. If we get to the 30,000 membership, which means we would have raised £300,000. Actually, some people who've joined have given us much more than £10. They've joined and they've donated, and we're already pretty much at 300,000 quid. In terms of money raised, and I would put 100,000 in because I think it's really important, Andy, that we govern we set out our stall and we follow it and we put our money where our mouth is. We've had too many politicians talking the talk and not walking the walk, and I want people to know that when I put that 100,000 in, I'm doing something actually that no political leader of any party has done before. I don't see Farage putting money into his party. Kemi Badenoch hasn't put any money in. Keir Starmer hasn't. I'm not aware of any leader of any political party who would have done what I'm about to do. And I want it to be utterly clear that I'm doing this not because I wish to make some political personal advancement. It's because I'm really in this along with all the people who've, joined Advance.
Absolutely. I want to roll back to something that you said a few moments ago, which is very important. One of the things that really is problematic in my mind with politics, and probably many other people as well, is the fact that if you look at PMQs on any given day, they just end up arguing over the dispatch box and trying to make each other look as bad as possible. And you see all the tittle-tattle between all the different parties, oh, look what they did. It's, and it's just, well, pardon my French, but it's bullshit. And you just did something. I'm not sure whether you picked up on it a few minutes ago. You didn't go down the Farage bashing route. You've said enough now. I've said this many times. Don't want to talk about it anymore. That's very important because that shows we've got work to do. Put that over there somewhere. It's done with. I found that very, very, very insightful, really.
Well, thank you. I mean, I've talked a lot about Nigel Farage. People have wanted to understand why it is I fell out with Reform, and they've wanted to understand why I've set up Advance UK. And it's hard to tell that story without talking about Reform and Nigel Farage. But the reason I got into politics was because I could see fundamentally that the political class was not representing the British people, that actually it was trashing the United Kingdom. Nowadays, if you believe in the United Kingdom, you're classed as far right. If you believe that we should have borders, that we should make policies for the betterment of our country and our people, you're classified as far right. And the political class and establishment has deliberately done that because it's standing against the people. It's standing against this country. It's governing through global internationalist principles, which are fundamentally not in our interests. And so, I'm a conviction politician. I don't need to be in politics. And for me, the key thing is to get to the solutions. I want to reveal the problems without just giving you sound bites and riding the 24-hour news cycle and finding the latest atrocity that allows me to bang the drum. I want to find out, and I think I've more or less got there, what it is that's causing so many problems in the United Kingdom. What are the root causes of our inability to enforce our borders, our inability to put British citizens first, our inability to champion small and medium-sized businesses, our inability to create aspiration over dependency, promote the working and middle classes, give them the tools with which they can then better their own lot. What are the root causes of these problems? Reveal those unemotionally, and then find the solutions which will deliver everything that we want for this country. Because if you play the 24-hour news cycle, if you do performative politics, if you bang the drum, you might get lots of support, but you're not going to solve the problem. And as I say, I didn't get into this for political personal advancement. I got into this because I want to solve the damn problem. So are you with me? And
Yeah,
um, and so Farage becomes an irrelevance. He's
yeah.
he's an impediment in the way of getting to the right result. And I'm just going to keep driving with advance until we get to the right result.
One of the, I mean, I just want to talk about Brexit just for a second.
Yeah,
Anybody that voted to leave, I've always read and always seen that we get put in a particular container. It's either racist, ignorant, stupid, or any other connotation of, or
yeah,
they wanted to stop the boats, so they voted Brexit. Me personally, I voted for Brexit because I recognised there was a political union over there somewhere trying to assert control of my country. And
absolutely.
they weren't voted by me. How can they know anything about the decisions that require making for the betterment of my country? That's why I voted leave. And one of the things, I'll show you this, that was pointed out to me. This is England. It's been being regionalised. There's 8 regions, 9 regions, never mind all the counties and shires that make up England. It's being regionalised. Now, from what I read, correct me if I'm wrong, this is an EU construct. Get out, go away. It's not yours. And I do
Yeah.
have to wonder, did we get a real Brexit?
No, we didn't. We absolutely didn't. No,
No.
we didn't, Andy. We didn't anywhere near get a. We haven't left the European Union. The vote to leave the EU was not just a vote to leave the EU. It was a vote for a new social contract between the British people and the government, a contract in which the British people's interests would be put first, the United Kingdom would be put first, that we would be sovereign, and that we would be a proud, independent, prosperous nation. That's what the vote to leave the EU was. And
Yeah.
what we got were 2 new treaties, one of which left Northern Ireland behind, created a border down the Irish Sea, which has been confirmed by the Supreme Court. There is a border between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. We've set aside the acts of union that actually created our country. The United Kingdom technically doesn't exist as a result of the withdrawal agreement that Boris Johnson signed. And then the trade and cooperation agreement that we signed hitches us at the hip on state aid, competition, employment, net zero, environment, commitment to the EU's arrest warrant. So a court in Europe can demand the arrest of a British citizen, and we can't protect that British citizen. That's not a trade agreement. That
No.
is a political agreement. That is a security agreement. We didn't vote for that. We didn't vote. We're spending money. We're spending hundreds of millions of pounds of British taxpayers' money contributing to the EU Defence Fund, which is a weapons development programme for EU interoperability, for the creation of an EU army. People don't understand what Boris Johnson signed. We have not left the EU. The battle in politics is not between the left and the right. The battle in politics is between the global order and national order. And I stand firmly on the national side. That's what the British people voted for. The biggest democratic mandate in 2016, which has been ignored. Brexit is still the issue of the day. Brexit is still the issue of the day. And this, without wishing to go back to Farage, is something I don't understand about him. He was Mr. Brexit. And yet he doesn't acknowledge this fact. He says Brexit's done. We just haven't done it properly. No, Brexit's not done.
No.
Until we are sovereign, until we are able to make policies for our country without having to take the knee to international law, we will not be able to do what's right for this country.
No.
We will be dancing to other people's tune. And Starmer, you may have heard me say, is positively anti-British because everything he does is for the global order against the United Kingdom. You've seen that he's signing us up to more EU regulations. He's given our fish over in greater for a greater period to the EU than Boris Johnson did. He is taking our army even more into the European Defence Union. He is signing up under the guise of having to protect Europe. He's going to hand over command of British armed forces to Brussels. What could be anything? What could be more damaging to our national security than effectively making us interoperable with the EU and then giving them command effectively of our armed forces. This is the direction we're moving in, and we need to stop it. We need to stop it now. The absence of borders, mass immigration, mass illegal migration, and inability to deport people, all of this is because they don't care about the United Kingdom. They care about the global order. Are you with me, Andy? And that's what
Yeah.
Advance UK. So if you read up on Advance UK, we have a very simple mission statement. We believe in the nation state of Great Britain and Northern Ireland in all its parts and for all its people, promoting and protecting its Christian constitutional and cultural roots. We believe in the freedom of the British people, freedom of speech. We stand against the indoctrination of our children. We stand for democracy and the throwing off of the shackles of supranational institutions and international law, the removing of bureaucracies and the lanyard class. You know, say bodies like Ofcom, like Elcom, like
Yeah.
the OBR, and so on, that is so damaged our democracy and taken power away from Parliament. We stand against those, and we stand for equality under the law, because we no longer have a criminal justice system that is blind to your background or blind to your ethnicity. Justice should be blind. It should be dispensed equally across everyone, no matter your color, no matter your religious beliefs, your sexual preferences, whatever. And actually, we have a sentencing council, for example, that wants to sentence people differently based on their ethnicity. I mean, nothing could be more obvious about the two-tier criminal justice system we have than our desire, not our desire, the sentencing council's desire to hand out prejudiced judgments. So we live in a country where every political party should be banging the drum for the nation state, should be banging the drum for freedom of speech, should be banging the drum for democracy and equality under the law, and none of them are. They're
No.
all part of the hijacked global order. And Advance UK set out its mission statement first, because I think it's critical, Andy, that in order to deliver the policies that will save the United Kingdom, you first have to have a political philosophy from which to create those policies. You need to know what it is you stand for. And none of the other political parties actually have that philosophy. As evident and obvious as our mission statement should be, none of them have it. And so we are unique in the British landscape.
I want to talk about, because you mentioned something that stuck out to me, and there's a super chat here I want to read. Thank you very much for the £10. English constitution is a solution. Ben never speaks of England and the English. The UK is not a country, it's a political union. Before we go down that road, you mentioned something about the Acts of Union. Now, there's the Acts of Union 1706, 1707, and the Act of Union 1800, which joined Northern Ireland to everything else. And you said a few minutes ago they've just ignored the Acts of Union. Which Acts of Union?
So it's the 1800 Act to which I'm referring, which created the United Kingdom. Before that, we were just Great Britain. 1707 created Great Britain, with Scotland coming in. And I'm referring to the Act of Union 1800. I'm referring specifically to Article 6, which states that no sovereign, by which it means no government, should create a situation, should sign an international treaty pursuant to which the Irish, now the Northern Irish, would not be on an equal footing with Great Britain. That every part of the Union would be on the same footing when it came to trade between every part of the Union and with any international partners. The withdrawal agreement, which basically left Northern Ireland in the European Union Customs Union, as well as subject, by the way, to EU human rights law and various other things, excise duty, VAT, and so on, that put Northern Ireland on a different footing from Great Britain. It was very cleverly done by the EU because it gave them the ability to effectively pull Northern Ireland out of the United Kingdom and in the process also create a grappling hook into the flesh of Great Britain so that we can't deviate and do what we wish to do for fear of losing Northern Ireland. And I think what we're going to end up doing, if we're not careful, is losing Northern Ireland and losing Great Britain. I understand. I'm going to come back to the English question. I grew up very proud. People may look at me and they go, he can't be English because he's brown and his name's Habib. My mother's English. My mother was born in Isleworth. She's blonde, blue-eyed. Her father was in the Home Guard. Before that, he fought in World War One. He fought in the Somme. He was the governor of Cologne as a young man. And I come from a family of middle-class Anglo-Saxons on my mother's side, and I come from a Punjabi Pakistani family on my father's side. But I was born in Pakistan. I came to this country in 1979 when I was 13. I had the great privilege of going to rugby school and being brought up with a very pro-British. When I went to school, we were very, very pro-British. There was no suggestion that the United Kingdom was not, if not the greatest country any longer in the world, it was certainly the best country in the world, and that our constitutional settlement was taken for granted. Our righteousness in every foreign endeavor was taken for granted. We were the good people on the planet, and I still believe it. And I will have an argument with anyone who says otherwise. Of course, we've made mistakes in our history. All countries do. All empires make mistakes, but we have been a force for good across the globe. Without the United Kingdom, we wouldn't have international trade the way it is. We wouldn't have had the agrarian revolution. We wouldn't have had the industrial revolution. We wouldn't have had the abolition of the slave trade. We wouldn't have had all the technological advancements that the world has seen so fantastically in the 19th century and 20th century. We're a fantastic country. And I'm not going to allow people to just talk us down because they've got some kind of guilt complex about our terrific past that we had. But coming to your point, when I grew up, we grew up with taking all of that for granted. And so we could have our little debates about England being, the best rugby team, or support England against Scotland if we were playing footy, or whatever it is, and have a go at the Welsh and have a go at the Scots or whatever. That was fine. That was fine when our existence as the United Kingdom was taken for granted. It is no longer fine. You do not sustain yourself as a country. England will not sustain itself as a country if we throw our brethren under the bus. We will not be able to do it. We've seen Chagos go. I don't know if people are aware, but Gibraltar has gone. Gibraltar, which afforded us the ability to defeat Napoleon, which was a critical port during World War II, has been handed over in the last few months without any fuss to the European Union. If we start becoming very England-centric, we will find that we will be defeated as a country. We have to stand absolutely firm for the United Kingdom. We must not allow any more ceding of authority, not allow any more interference by international institutions and foreign powers in the United Kingdom. We can have our little discussions about England versus Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, how that arrangement settles, what's best for our respective peoples. But let's have that debate after we have secured the United Kingdom. We can't have that debate when the United Kingdom itself is facing a threat to its very existence. And that is where we are at the moment, Andy.
I see a lot of comments from, different parts, Scotland, England, Wales, Northern Ireland to an extent, and they all want to be treated equally. I mean, there's English here, the rest is spoken about, but what about England? I think that does generate a lot of ill feeling to an extent where a lot of this comes from, and you get things like, we've got to stick together. Now, when I look at the history of it, I keep going back to the same thing again and again. The British Parliament, the way we are governed, the way the parties have been set up, whips and things like that. And it appears to me that decisions are no longer made for the betterment of the people. I mean, hell, even the job description of an MP's been rewritten under everybody's nose. I'm not sure if you were aware of that. That's on the actual government website. You can read it. And it no longer says represent the people who put you there. It's crazy. I I don't know what you think of that.
It is all gone. We are slip sliding very, very fast. I mean, I think the fact that an MP can take their seat without having sworn allegiance to their role in their country on the Bible is a real sign that the country is not where it should be. You
No.
know, we are slipping. But the threats that we face are much, much bigger now than the threat of England not getting a fair shake of the economic dice, for example. Of course, I'm aware that we sustain Scotland, we sustain Northern Ireland. By the way, that doesn't have to be the case. You know, with the right policies, we could have Northern Ireland could be fantastically economically prosperous. But I mean, let's just talk about Northern Ireland for a second. It's the biggest deficit economy in the United Kingdom. We, the English, are supporting it to the tune of about between £8,000 and £10,000 per head of people that live in Northern Ireland. That's what we're paying for Northern Ireland. But if you allow Northern Ireland, as it does, to trade with the Republic of Ireland as an open economy, and then give it a corporation tax rate that is twice that what it is in the Republic, don't invest in it in the way that the EU has invested in the Republic. More British money, by the way, has gone into the Republic of Ireland than it has into Northern Ireland, because we paid money to Brussels and they put it into the Republic. So if you invest in the Republic, you give it a lower tax regime, Northern Ireland is going to suffer. And we have, our political class has done nothing to address that imbalance. Northern Ireland doesn't have to be a bad economy. Scotland doesn't have to be a net taker from English largesse. We need proper joined up thinking of how we're going to govern the country for everyone to be prosperous. And, you know, the idea that everyone talks about leveling up, leveling up, leveling up.
Yeah.
And what it boils down to is chucking cash at areas that actually need a complete economic reinvention. At the same time, as we deindustrialize the United Kingdom, the vast majority of the parts of the United Kingdom that are not doing well because we deindustrialize them. We handed over manufacturing to foreign powers. We then adopted net zero, which made energy for industry extremely expensive in the United Kingdom. We've damaged our ability to level up. What we need to be doing, and Trump has got this right, he's absolutely got this right, is bringing production back to the UK. Now, that in itself is going to be a painful process. But if you bring production back to the UK, if you make the regulatory environment more favorable for businesses in the UK than it is in the EU or the US, if you reduce taxes so businesses can make more money in the UK, Scotland, Northern Ireland, and the UK than they can, and England, than they can in Europe or the US, you'll get foreign businesses investing in the UK. You will get resurgence of economic prosperity, and leveling up will happen automatically. Trump has seen it. Trump has seen it. He knows you can't be spending loads of blooming cash on China and expect to become prosperous. You've got to do it at home. And so you even see this with Reeves, and their idea of leveling up is more benefits for people living in the northeast, or more benefits for people living in the East End of London. You don't do it that way. You've got to give people the tools with which they can make their own prosperity, and that involves, we talk about immigration. Stop me if this is boring, but I think it's on point. We talk about immigration all the time and the damage it's doing. Yeah. Undermining British workers, creating problems for our housing, for our NHS. It's more burden on the public sector, et cetera, et cetera. But international free trade is a bit like immigration. You're giving British jobs away to Chinese people who are creating those products. That trade deal that we just did with India, I don't know if viewers are familiar with it. Starmer just signed a trade deal with India.
I am, yeah.
The last thing we should be doing is signing a free trade deal with India. Why would we want to give them access to our highly regulated, highly taxed markets, selling their cheap product into our market, effectively using their lack of regulations, their lower taxes, their lower wages to undermine our ability to produce stuff? It's daft as brushes. What we should be doing is making ourselves more competitive as a country.
Yeah.
And if we did that, we wouldn't be worrying about English largesse having to support Scotland and Northern Ireland. English largesse would be even larger, and Scotland would be able to support itself. Northern Ireland would support itself. We'd become a prosperous nation. How did we get our wealth? We got our wealth not through the slave trade, as the detractors of our history would say. We got our wealth through being a nimble, independent, manufacturing and trading nation. We got our empire as a result of being a nimble, independent trading nation. We didn't do it through military might. Yeah, Britannia ruled the seas and we had a fantastic military, but our empire was built on the back of commerce. It was because we were so good at commerce, and we're killing our commerce.
I saw a wonderful picture. I think it might have even been you that tweeted it. It was a picture of our Royal Navy around the time of the Queen's coronation. All of the ships there, and if you compare that with now, it's pathetic, isn't it?
It's pathetic.
How far we've sunk. What I want to do, I mean, it's blankly obvious to me that we need to get our house in order. We need to sort the EU out, ditch them, renegotiate, get rid, get our house in order, and then thrive. That is very, very much obvious. There's a couple of tweets I want to bring your attention to, and if you don't mind, Ben, I want to go through and talk about what the audience has asked, because a lot of that is quite relevant to Advance and where it's going. There's a tweet here that you put up. I get asked from time to time if the Advance UK is sensitive about who can and cannot join the party. If you're a British citizen on the electoral roll and not a member of another political party, you're welcome. When you join, you're endorsing our mission statement and our policies. We're not judging or endorsing you. And then a little bit about the pearl-clutching censorist brigade. You probably think the same as I do about them. But there's a couple of points about being on, one being on the electoral roll. When you look at the turnout in elections, the last general election, quite a few local elections as well, on average, 40% of the electorate doesn't bother turning up. Are they on the electoral roll?
Yeah.
Is it a case of, what's the point because of things we've discussed already? How do you incentivize them to turn up and vote? I mean, think about it. In my house, I'm the only one that votes. There's two others of adult age that don't. There's other pockets all over the place, and that adds up to pretty bloody large numbers. So how do you incentivize them to come out and make the difference? Because that's what keeps this system working the way it does, this splitting the vote, which again, pardon me to be blunt, is bullshit. And, making people think they only vote like Tories. And how do we get them out?
Can you hear me, Andy? I seem to have lost you there for a second. Are you there?
Yeah.
So, I mean, just on that point, you're absolutely right. A lot of people don't vote. And why would they? Because they've been ignored every time they voted. And I think the best example is the vote to leave the European Union. 17.4 million people, the biggest vote for any single issue in the United Kingdom ever, even to date, was to leave the EU. And they didn't blooming do it. And then Boris Johnson marched everyone to the top of the hill, promising to deliver Brexit, get Brexit done. 67.5% of the electorate turned out for him, and he didn't blooming do it. And so in 2024, only 59.5% of the electorate voted. As you say, 40% didn't vote. And I think the challenge for all the political parties, and I hope that Advance UK will meet this challenge, is to make it utterly clear to those who like what Advance UK have to say, or in the case of other political parties, what they say, that the promises that they make will be delivered. Whatever it is that they say, whether you or I like it or not, will they actually blooming do what they say they're going to do? Starmer talks about busting stopping the illegal migration. He's going to bust the gangs, border security command. He's going to kill the dinghy trade. He's going to get the French to police their shores. He's going to deport people. Blah, 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 blah. He doesn't bloody achieve it, does he?
No, he
And
doesn't.
I think we will get better turnout when political parties actually deliver on what they say they're going to do. And I'm not going to budge. I'm going to be very, very, Advance UK is going to be very, very clear on what it believes in. It's going to be very, very clear on how it's going to deliver that. And if people don't like it, that's fine. Don't vote for us. That's fine. Your liberty to vote for someone else. But we're not going to sell you a false promise. We're not going to go hither or thither to curry favor with the electorate. We have a very clear view of what is correct and right for the country, what's going to save the country, and how it's to be saved. And we're going to put that out there for the British people, and then it'll be for them to decide. And I do believe, by the way, Andy, that the silent majority and where the British people are at the moment is exactly what Advance UK will be offering. Whether or not we'll be able to make the connection with the British people, with the silent majority, remains to be determined. Can Advance UK get well known enough to make the impact it needs to make at the next general election? That remains to be determined. But I am 100% confident that the silent majority, the 17.4 million people who voted to leave the EU, would be completely behind Advance UK.
I think that's the main thing, isn't it? I mean, you know, you've been doing the podcast rounds, myself, Paul Thorpe, Leon Tufts, and various others. You seem to have disappeared from the likes of GB News and Talk TV and everything. So we know why. You're a threat. You know, sweep you under the carpet. It's just getting the word out, isn't it? And the policies. You mentioned the boats. I mean,
can I just say something on that? Can I just say something on that? They're in for a shock. They're in for a shock because if they think they can silence me, forget it. The more they try and silence me, the louder we're going to scream. And it's not me. It's the British people who are going to scream. I'm going to give the British people a voice through Advance, and we are going to scream, and they won't be able to shut us up. It's been quite revealing for me, Andy, that the way certain channels who purport to be for free speech and purport to stand for the United Kingdom, etc., are now turning on Advance UK.
Yeah.
And how they're not turning on other parties who shall remain nameless.
Yeah, it's the establishment against the need and want to change, isn't it? Very, very much so. Danny in Spain. Hi, Danny. Good to see you, mate. This really is the man for the job now, in my opinion. Come on, let's all get behind Ben. Absolutely.
Thank you, Danny.
There's another comment. I wonder if Paul's sneaking around in the background somewhere. Wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, absolutely. First, I've heard Ben speaking. I really like this man. Could listen to him all day. Really knows his stuff. That's Steve Moore. Thank you, Steve. That's wonderful. Okay, let's say £5 super chat. Who's the lad who levered the French? Who's the lad who kicked Boney's ass? Okay, I think I get the sentiment. Thank you for the fiver. Let's say you won the general election and Prime Minister Ben Habib. That's got a ring to it, hasn't it? What would your first year in office look like? What would be your priorities? Where would you start? Have you thought about that?
Yeah, I have. I've thought about it a lot. I mean, so the first day in office, forget about the first year, the first day in office, and this is, I think, critical. Any party wishing to form the next government and to deliver a pro-British agenda has to have ready not just the policies, but the draft legislation. And the other thing, Andy, is you've got to say what it is you're going to do in your manifesto, because the Lords can't resist you if you set it out in your manifesto. If you're telling porkies to get into office and then you try and do something else, the Lords can resist you because it's not a manifesto pledge. So we're going to be very blooming clear about what it is we're going to do. We haven't made our policies yet, but the overarching approach of Advance UK is going to be, on day one, suspending the granting of indefinite leave to remain in the United Kingdom. So no one gets the right to remain here indefinitely just because they've been here for a few years. Suspending the granting of British citizenship straight away. The repealing of the Human Rights Act. which is effectively the European Convention of Human Rights embodied in British law, which I think has done so much damage to British citizenry because it's equated human rights for everyone to basically being a British citizen. It doesn't matter that you're a British citizen anymore in the United Kingdom. You have no better rights. In fact, your rights are worse than people who've come to this country. Repealing the Equalities Act, which has created progressive discrimination. Effectively, it's the foundations for the promotion of minorities over and above into the detriment of the majority, what I would call progressive discrimination. Repealing the Climate Change Act. So getting rid of net zero, supercharging our industry, our businesses, cutting our energy costs, drilling for gas, getting rid of the Human Rights Act so we can enforce our borders, and making sure that anyone who's in the United Kingdom here, we can deal with the benefit of some time by suspending the granting of indefinite leave to remain in British citizenry. So I would put a protective blanket at day one. There would be a protective blanket around the United Kingdom, giving us a clean field with which to then deliver all the policies we need to for the United Kingdom over the forthcoming years. Does that make sense?
Certainly
So
does.
get rid of the age. So we don't know how many immigrants are here legally or illegally. But if you suspend giving indefinite leave to remain and suspend granting of British citizenship, you bought yourself time to find out what the hell's going on before you have to deal with it. Get rid of the Human Rights Act so that you can implement your borders and you can deport people the way they need to be deported. Instead of people being in four-star hotels, you detain them and then you deport them. And if you can't deport them to the countries from which they came because we don't have deportation arrangements with them, you sanction those countries, or you cease trading with them, or you cease giving them aid that we used to give them. You find a mechanism to force these countries to take their people back. And those people who are here legally, we give them incentives consensually. Please go back to your home. We want to settle our country. You've been great. Please go home. We need that period of stability and protection while we sort ourselves out. I don't advocate any extreme measures. I don't advocate doing anything that would be violent or in any way revolutionary. What I'm setting out is the principles by which we would buy ourselves time to then peaceably resolve our position. And nothing I've said should be offensive to anyone. It is simply protecting the UK. No one's entitled to indefinite leave to remain. No one is entitled to a British citizenship. No one is entitled to stay here if they came here illegally. No one is entitled to stay here if their visa has expired, and so on and so on and so forth. And yeah, so that's the first day. Get rid of the Climate Change Act, get rid of the Equalities Act, get rid of progressive discrimination, get rid of the Human Rights Act and the ECHR, suspend indefinite leave to remain, suspend granting of British citizenship, and then take stock of where we are and then roll out your other policies.